So we are just going to the advanced tab now, and now we will enable the report as web service. So we'll come here and you see here, there is a box here, enable as web service. So until now it is unchecked because this report is not enabled as web service. When I'm going to check, you will notice some changes here that will happen here for these two fields. So I'll just enable it now. So when I'm enabling it, there are two things that happen. There is a web service API version got generated automatically here. And then the namespace column also got filled automatically from the report. So what this API version is, that it kind of runs parallelly to your Workday versions. Previously, Workday used to call these versions like this, but now they are calling it as 2022 R1, R2, 2023 R1, R2 to make the things simpler. But the code kind of versions or the technical versions are still being maintained like this. So this is like the current Workday version the Workday is on. So by default, it is being chosen as this because the functionalities might be added, removed in the coming versions or the previous versions. So by default, it gives you the latest version. But let's say if there is something which is not available in the latest version, then you might go to the previous version and see if that functionality is supported in the previous versions. But by default, it will give you the latest version. And then the namespace column. So this column is very important, which gets auto-filled when you are enabling a report as web service, and you can make changes to it as well. But by default, it will follow a format given by Workday. And what this actually namespace is, so and why it comes here when you are enabling the report as a web service, and it was not there when your report was not enabled as web service. So whenever your report was only used for in-house purposes to be run in background or just for the scheduling, there was no need of this report being exposed to the outside world. But enabling this report as a web service, now giving it the capability that it will now be exposed as a REST API, or now it can be exposed as a REST API to the outside world, wherein it will require a unique name, and that unique name has some features, because this namespace will then be used later on when this report will be used in your further integrations down the line. So this namespace is kind of a technical name for your report, which gets auto-generated by following a particular format, which is like this. So it says URN, then :com, then .workday .report. So until here, you'll keep it as same for every other custom report that you create and you enable it as web service. This will be common. And the changes will start from here, which will be followed by your name of your custom report. And since this namespace cannot have spaces in between, that's why by default, if your report does have any spaces in between, it will be filled up by the underscores. And if you see, the report name was something like this, and it automatically picked up the name and then applied the underscores to fill up these spaces, because this cannot have spaces in between. So for now, the namespace of your report is like this. But if you want to make a change and call it something else, or maybe append some characters to it, you can do that to make it more unique if you want. So this is what the namespace of your, we'll learn more about this when we'll do the web service exposures and all. But for now, this is your namespace, which will be your unique name for your report when this report will be exposed to the outside world. And if you see, if I'm just hovering over it, you're getting some message that changing the namespace could break existing integrations. So if you have decided to change the namespace of this report to something else, and then you did not let the vendor know about it and share the URL again, so they might be hitting something to you, and the namespace could not be found here, which it was initially shared. So we will not change the namespace once it is created, although it is allowed. But if you are doing it, then do share it at all the places, or wherever the report is being referenced, because it will not be automatically referenced.
So this urn.com .workday.report. So is it universal for all the enterprise, or like it differs from enterprise to enterprise?
Enterprise, when you are saying, it's like
I mean, if it is like my company, or it's like another company, like
no,
wherever
it will
it
be
is.
same. It is like Workday's,
urn.com. Okay.
yeah, it's Workday's nomenclature. And whether you are in this tenant or whether you are in any other tenant, it does not distinguish based on the tenant, does not distinguish based on the companies. It's like a uniform format which Workday is following, and this will be like this.
Okay, and did you get this link somewhere, like, or you know, since you know it, you wrote it, right? Like you didn't, you
No.
can't.
We did not do it. I just checked this box and Workday automatically wrote this name
Okay,
for me. What it did is that,
based on the report name.
yeah, this is common, but
Mhm.
this thing is based on your report name. So if your report name already has any, if your report name does not have any spaces in between, then it will be exactly as same as your report. But if your report has any spaces, so since it cannot have any spaces, it by default applies the underscores to cover these spaces, and it will be the report name by default. But then if you want to make a change to it, you want to append something or maybe remove something, then you can still do that. But make sure that this namespace is unique across all your reports which are web service enabled, so that Workday does not gets confused when somebody gets a call to this. Somebody hits this report as a
Mm-hmm.
web service from outside, so they should get a unique reference out of it.
Okay, and in what category you're choosing this version? Version 41.
So
So
it's
you're
by default,
choosing the
yeah,
latest one.
yeah, the latest one I'm choosing because I don't know if I'm going to miss anything in here, but if I'm missing anything and which is I want to require and that was available in the previous version, that you then you can go back to the previous version and use that particular version. Otherwise, by default, we stick to the latest version.
Okay.
So this is you do on your advanced tab. And you'll notice one more thing on the advanced tab. When your report is using an index data source, which is we are doing in our case, so flash sign is there, and we are kind of using an index data source. So when we are using an index data source, there is one more checkbox which gets enabled here in the report performance category, which says optimized for performance. So this checkbox is by default unchecked for us. If I enable or disable it, it will uh, make some changes to my report, which I will feel little later. So it is just giving me a warning that if I don't check it, my report might run slower. And if I check it, then it is optimized for performance. So what this does is, let's say I have this box checked, optimized for performance, and let's now save our report. So I'm getting an error. Let's see. So I'm getting an error that the entered information does not restriction defined for this field. Maybe something is there. Column. I'll go here. Am I using any related business object? Filter is there. Do I have any additional columns? No. Everything is well. Still getting an error. Okay, it's in the sub filter. Is it the prompt? I already defined it, right? It could be what I'm guessing. Let me see if I really need to declare it. No, it's not even a declaration here. Yep, I got it. You just go. Now check. Now I'll see. So this is actually I wanted to show you, and it automatically came up. That's why I have checked this box. So I'll just go again. So that's what I was trying to tell you, that this optimized for checkbox, how it affects is that when I have enabled this checkbox, I was not able to save this report because there was a field I was using in my subfilter here. And this subfilter field was actually it was a calculated field, but down the line it was using a workday delivered field. And that workday delivered field was not indexed. So as I told you that along with the data source indexation, there are fields as well which are indexed in nature. So if there is a field which is not indexed, not belonging to the index category, and if you're using those fields somewhere in your filter or in your column, then what will happen is that, and also if you're optimized for performance box is checked. So if you have checked this button, that means you are kind of saying to Workday that I want to optimize my report for performance. And when I'm checking this button, I'm allowing Workday to only use my kind of indexed fields if I have used an indexed fields anywhere. So that will be allowed. And if my fields are not indexed, then those will not be allowed. So if I go to my sub filter here, there was this field which was not allowed as this field was not indexed. And since I have already added it, the report was kind of showing me the error. But the other way around, what could happen is, since let me just remove this for now. And let me keep it checked here. So now there is an error in the column. I think this field is there, I'm guessing. Just a sec. It is, I'm hoping this email field. I'm hoping this is the email field. Let me just remove it. Oh, is this email field?
Is there a way to undo the thing? Like now you removed, right? Like do we have an option to undo, like go back to the original step?
You can do that, but you'll have to either, if you are in the editing mode, you can cancel it and then you
Cancel.
can
Okay.
go again to the report. But if you have some in between changes, then you will not be able to do that.
Okay.
I'll just keep it. Which field? That is the problem of Workday. It does not give the exact. Is it the, no, it's not the. I wanted to show you something else, but I'm stuck at some other place. Could be this. So that was my prompt giving me the issue. Let my report fields back. Now I'll go here and here. So you see here, I'm searching for a field. I'm searching for a field called email primary work. Go to the field. So you see here that I'm only, although in my report, there are 4 fields, but in here, when I'm applying the filter, I'm only allowed to have these 2 fields. So what's happening, and these, you must be observing these yellow signs as well, along with their respective field signs. These fields are icons are coming as yellow. So what these yellow means is that these fields are indexed in nature. So when I have checked this box, and let me now uncheck it. So now you see the field count has increased just from this category itself. And if I just go back and just try to search the same field, now I'll be shown this field. So what happens is that when you check this box optimized for performance, and you will probably know it little later after trying so much, that you will see that why this it's a very simple field, and I'm trying to search here, and that field is not coming, and not just this field, all the other fields are on not come. I'm not able to see these fields in the filter or subfilter, because Workday will not allow me to because in filtration, you know that Workday kind of compares a lot of things, do the comparison to text or something else and whatever that field is. So it kind of takes more time when the field is not indexed. And when you have when you have made your report to check this box optimized for performance, then you are asking Workday that you need to optimize my report, and to optimize the report, it kind of only allows, because Workday cannot optimize more if the fields are not indexed. So it wants only indexed fields to perform more optimization. So if you don't want to check this box, you can uncheck it. And if you're not, and if you because not every field is indexed. So just for the sake of performance, you cannot manage with or have your piece with the basic functionality that you want in your report to apply filters on some fields which are maybe not indexed. So you do want to apply indexing, and you do want to use it in your filters or subfilters. But since Workday is not allowing you in the optimize for performance mode, then you first come to the advanced tab, have it unchecked, then go and then apply your conditions in the fields, whatever you want. So then you will be allowed to use index and non-index, both kind of fields. So that's what I was trying to say, that if you have it checked, you will only be allowed to use indexed fields. And if it is unchecked, you will be allowed to use both the fields. So if there is some field you are not able to use, or it's not coming in your filter prompts, that means that field is indexed, that field is not indexed, and you have checked this button, which is why you will only be shown the indexed fields. So I've kept it unchecked for now, because if I want to use indexed fields, and if you have your indexed fields you want in columns, there will be no restriction, because column is the data part where you need the data to be shown. But the restriction only applies to the filter subfilters, wherein you need only you only allowed to use index fields in here. But the columns places, since it's a data where you will be shown, so Workday will allow you to use non-index fields in the columns area for the data, but not for the filtration and all. I'll just save it. Any doubts?
No.
And one more thing we just saw here in the report tags. So when you go to the editing mode of the report, you must have seen the report tags. The report tags are used to kind of tag your report to particular category, depends on the system or the business that you are working with. They want to tag the reports to some tag. Let's say this is a payroll report, this is a HR ops report, this is a reporting teams report. So based on different categories you are maintaining, so from critical to non-critical, from a downstream perspective, whether the report is API enabled or not. So these are like free text fields. So if I just go create a report tag, and maybe just write a report tag, API report. I'll click OK. So now I have created a tag API report. And now that tag, since I created from here itself, by default, my report is tagged as an API report. So these tags helps from the reporting purposes. If I'm segregating my reports tomorrow, if I'm creating a dashboard, so these tags helps a lot. And this tag is now created as a free tag. And let's say you are creating another report tomorrow, and that report is also belonging to the same category. You want to mark it as an API report because your report is web service enabled, and that will be used by your downstream somewhere. So you can write those custom tags, whatever you want, belonging to the different categories. And when you want to do reports of reports, you can filter them, you can identify them using the tags, so that if you are building a dashboarding or whatever you are doing, these reports tags will help you identify which category of these reports are, and it will allow you to filter easily. That's also one useful thing on the report tags.
You said while after enabling the report as web services, usually it will be like a JSON file or an XML file. So you said you can see the code, right?
Yeah. So that's what we will be checking now. So, so now you have enabled the report as a web service here, and now your report can work as a web service. So how do you go from here? And let's say there was a requirement here that there was a new system onboarded, and they are looking for a demographic information from you, so that they can enable the Workday users in their system. And so that if they want to use that system for anything else, or it could be any system, it could be LDAP system, it could be Active Directory, so that whatever user information, because Workday is source of truth, and there could be a number of requirements where you'll be asked to share. And this will be your first approach, that if you'll tell them that, okay, we have a REST API that we can expose. So this is your custom REST API, which you are using via the custom report, creating it via report, and using all these different customized fields, calculated fields, and then you will be enabling it as a REST API. So then they can consume this data by, it will not be a push from Workday, it will be a pull. So it will be outbound, but Workday will not be pushing this data. You will be exposing this report as a REST API. You will be sharing the URL and credentials, and then the other system will be enabling this URL in their connector or whatever system they have. And then whatever the schedule they are going to fix, every time they will hit this URL, which we are going to discuss now. And then the Workday data will be pulled from Workday, pulled from their system. So how do you generate all these things from here? So first of all, you'll create the report as a normal report, advanced type, and with the web service enabled. So when you enable it as a web service, then only it will be exposed as an API. One thing I forgot to mention to you. So this alias was there, right? So when you enable your report as a web service, your column names, if you go here, so you get two categories here, column heading override and column heading override XML aliases. So this, when your report is not web service enabled, you will only be able to see this thing, because this is like a column heading override. It's just like to rename your column. So by default, if you do not name this column anything, then the field name itself will be used. It will not be populated here, but when you run the report locally, by default, these names will be used to represent your column. So this is column heading override, which is used as your column representation when you are running the report inside Workday. But there is another tab here which says column heading override XML alias. So this tab is used for the column representations when you are enabling your report as a web service. And this is mandatory when you are enabling the report as a web service. And this particular column cannot have any spaces in between as well. If you have any space in between, it is going to error out and tell you that your column heading override XML alias cannot have any spaces in between. So by default, it is going to take your field. If you're not defining anything from your end, it will just take your field, and if your field has any spaces, by default, it will apply the underscore and make it suitable to this field. But you can always edit it as you want. But Workday suggests you to have it as short and meaningful as possible, because these are just codes. System is going to read these codes. If you want some meaningful information to be run in Workday, you can have it as long as you want here. So Workday does not have a hard stop here, but it kind of validates and gives you a warning, because the longer the tag name for this XML alias is, it will take the report more time to generate these longer tags, and it might ultimately impact your report's performance. So keep these tags as short as possible, so that it is easy for you to identify as well that what this field actually holds. And at the same time, it also helps the system to to increase the performance. So these fields are used, and your fields which you have here will now be exposed with these names. So you can call it whatever you want. If somebody is calling the cost center as business unit in their system, then you can use the business unit. If somebody wants to call the cost center as a department, then whatever the downstream wants to have these names, you will just write accordingly. But we cannot have any spaces in between. So what are the name you do here, that the report will be represented, the columns will be represented by these names. So if I just go quick, so this is one of the important things with the column heading, and one of these things, group column heading as well. I discussed this. I think we discussed yesterday group column headings. This is used when you are using any related business objects data. So now your report is web service enabled. How do you generate the URL for this? These are normal options. You just edit the report, copy the report, run your report, schedule, test, ownership. We'll just discuss. So I'll come here to the very last, which says web service, easy to identify. And then you go here, you do view URLs. So when I click on here, view URLs, I'll be shown this page where Workday will be telling me different URLs that it supports. So basically the main type of formatting, main type of formats that Workday suggests and allows is, it's Workday XML, simple XML, and mostly JSON. CSV is also there, but the most preferred way of the clients, as per my experience and other systems that I have worked with, the most preferred way would be the JSON, but it depends on system to system. Since JSON is very light language, so it kind of also again creates a performance and make the message size very small. So the preferred way of getting the output is most downstream by JSON, but they can ask you some other options as well, like simple XML. I have seen a system like Beeline, which is a contingent worker system. So that system actually asks for simple XML data. So depends on system to system, but majority of the ones needs JSON. But whatever you can give, simple XML, Workday XML, CSV, JSON, whatever they want. So these are the ones which are used. So these are different types of, and we'll now go from here. So this is the way where you see all the URLs here. Now, some of the systems which are still new and have not been integrated with Workday, they can ask you for a file called XSD file, wherein they want to know the data structure of your REST API that you have built via the custom report, to identify what kind of fields you have added in your system. Are they date fields, or are they string fields, any Boolean fields, or what kind of fields they are, to understand the data structure of their fields, so that the tabular structure or the database structure that they are building inside their system to consume your data, they will be accordingly creating using the XSD structure. So it's like a schema of your REST API, which does not contain any data, just the schema representation of the fields that you are using, that how your data will be represented there. It will not contain any data. It will just be the schema representation of the data structure that you are going to share them. So not every client will ask for it, but if they ask for it, that you have this option, it will be XML, it will be generated in the form of XML. So you can share it using this. We'll see how do we generate it. But if any system asks for it, you can share, but usually not every system asks. Very rare systems ask for the XSD structure, but if they do ask, then you have the option. So how do you generate this? You just click on it here on the XSD URL. So it will be open in another tab in your XML here. You can also download this file if you want. So this is how your XSD structure is generated. Now, how this XSD structure is understood. So if you see here, it's kind of an XML document, which is created here by Workday for you. And it has some basic XML concepts laid in here. So since XML is owned by the W3org and they are the writer of these, so you'll see a lot of libraries and the namespaces which are coming from the W3org school. So this is like the XML tag here, XSD schema, which is built here. And then XSD schema gets, so everything is inside this XSD schema, which is getting opened here and closed here. So in XML, every element is opened and closed to make it a perfect syntax structure. If some element is open and it is not getting closed, it is not a perfect XML. So this is how your XML is there. This is the XSD schema. Then these are the things which are called as XMLNS, that is XML namespace. So these are namespaces which are uniquely identifying any elements which are created or used by these organizations. So the namespace of this is XML namespace XSD, because this is the XSD schema. So the namespace that they have given is XSD. So any elements which are used as a XSD prefix, that means they are belonging to this XML namespace. Similarly, there is another namespace here, XML NSWD. Now, if you remember, have you seen this anywhere? If you can you remember what is it? Have we seen it before?
Namespace
Yeah,
in
so
the advanced tab.
correct. So this is the namespace of your report that we have just seen. So this is how your technical representation of your report name here. And this is a namespace as we discussed in the advanced tab. And Workday is generating the namespace XML XML namespace. And then the name of the alias of the namespace is WD. And what is it? The complete name? It's this. So any data that will be coming from our XML as an data, that is employee ID or whatever you written, that will be prefixed with WD. So namespaces are kind of uniquely identifying the data source from where those elements are coming in. So you see, we are using an element, XSD element. So we are placing XSD here. So now I'm prefixing XSD with the element. I'm prefixing XSD for restriction. I'm prefixing XSD for complex type. So now the processor will know that these elements which I have written here and prefix them with XSD, from where they are coming. They are coming from here. So this is the namespace which is being used by the representation of XSD. So if I'm prefixing anything before this, that means it is coming from this namespace to uniquely identify this data. Similarly, XMLNS, you will see when we are going to generate the actual data, you will see all the elements that we have, like employee ID, hire date, whatever we are using, that will be prefixed with WD, because the source for those fields is this namespace, which is coming from your report. So they will be prefixed with WD. So that's how the importance of namespace is. And then there is another namespace, XMLNS and YU. So these are all the default namespaces which gets generated by XML. So this is just your custom, which is based on your custom report. This will change as your custom report changes, and all these will be defaulted as per the XML for your namespace. And then this is the structure of your XML, which is telling them that what all the fields are being used in your report and what is the type of the data elements, just like the sequencing here, that your hire date is here, the name of the element is hire date, and what is the type of this field. It is a date type field. There's a department field, which is a string type field. There is an email field, which is a string type field. There is a dependent field. So it is treating your your single instance field or multi-instance field as a string only, because just as I told you before, only Workday differentiates based on the single instance and the multi-instance, because it allows us to store multiple level of data or single level of data. But for the outside system, they are just text. Only difference it would make between the date fields, between the Boolean fields, and between the text fields. So this is how your XML is. So you need not to understand it much. You just need to share it with the, because you should know the basic understanding of how this is generated. You just need to share this file. If somebody asks you, save as and share this file and tell them that this is the XSD structure of the data that we are going to send. And you can only send this in the XML format. But the actual data, you will have options to generate in multiple languages.
So Vijay, I have a question. Like, so when you say like inbound, outbound, like even I have seen like multiple times in our organization, like certain jobs and certain positions, I guess. It is saying that inbound and outbound action. So what is the actual difference? Like what does it actually mean?
Can you please come again? Inbound, outbound action. I'm not getting your question.
No, what in Workday I've always seen like here, lot many places they mention as inbound and outbound. So what does actually mean inbound, outbound for Workday?
Okay, the terminology you're asking in terms of
Yeah,
the
the
integrations.
terminology. Yeah.
Okay, so inbound, outbound. So whenever we talk in terms of Workday, so we are the owner of Workday. We are working on Workday. So whatever the names are we are going to define to our integrations, we'll be defining as per Workday. So if something is going out of Workday, those that will be considered as outbound from us. That is, it is an outbound integration. So report is kind of an outbound integration because it is sending the data to the outside system. If I'm calling a core connector worker, so my core connector worker is an outbound integration sending the data to outside. If I'm saying EIB, so in EIB, I have two options, EIB inbound and EIB outbound. So EIB outbound will be generating the data, extracting the data and sharing it to the outside. So that will be EIB outbound. I could have an EIB inbound wherein I will be updating some data back to Workday. So when the data is exposed from Workday and sent outside, it is an outbound integration. And when the data is consumed in Workday and updated in Workday, then that is in inbound integration from our side. Don't think it from an outside systems perspective. It could be different because when they are consuming our data, in their sense, it is inbound. But from our sense, it is outbound. So just make it simple. Consider from a Workday ends perspective, it is an outbound integration from you when you are sending the data out. So these two common names you will hear, and you might hear or you may have heard already a name called boomerang integrations. So there are, other than the inbound and outbound integrations, there are boomerang integrations which are created using the studio. So those boomerang integrations are like such that you are neither sharing the data to the outside system and neither you are consuming any data from the outside system. What you're actually doing is you are taking the Workday data, applying some logical transformation, and then updating the same data in Workday only. So you're taking the data, applying some logics, and then using the web services, updating the data back to Workday. So there is no third-party data involved. Your integrations are created in Workday. Your source of data is also Workday. Transformation, whatever happens with the business rules, that is also inside. And then you update the data back to Workday. So these are called as boomerang integrations.
Vijay, is
So
this in our agenda to cover boomerang integrations?
no, since boomerang integrations are created using Studio, so this is not part of our agenda. But when you learn Studio, then you might hear that the boomerang integrations are. So it's somebody can name them as boomerang as well. It is ideal that when you are writing Studio integrations, the naming convention should contain inbound, outbound, such as boomerang as well. So I have worked on a boomerang integration before, so uh, I could tell. But not everyone have worked on the boomerang integration. There are very rare cases where the boomerang integrations are created actually. So when the business rules are not meeting, when you cannot achieve it by something else, then only you create the boomerang integration. So this is what I answered your question, right? This is what you were asking.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So you're saying say like inbound, outbound, like when data is consumed from outside, it is inbound. When data is sent to other system, then outbound. Like system means like in, say for example in our organization, Workday touch multiple other systems as well, like Canvas or any other system. So it means like it is not like the outside system means like some other vendor. It can be still an outside system other than Workday. Anything is considered as outbound, right?
Correct. It could be your
Okay.
organization's another system. Maybe your organization has
Okay.
bought that. It could be, let's say, a recruiting system.
Mm.
So you're not using Workday recruiting, and you're using a third-party recruiting system like Greenhouse, Fieldglass, or any system. So your recruitment
Mm-hmm.
is happening outside Workday, and now you are actually you're not hiring people directly in Workday. You're hiring people in outside Workday, and since Workday is the source of truth, ideally all the employees should exist in Workday. So then you hire those employees via integration. So then Your source of data is outside, maybe a recruiting system, and people are hired there. They are being offered there. All the prospectus and everything happens outside Workday. And then you use Workday integrations to create and hire the employees back into Workday. So all the offer part, the prospectus part happens outside, and then you hire them using the web services or the integrations and then load them in Workday, so that now they are hired in Workday, where they will be actually staying and their entire journey will be happening after they are hired.
Okay.
So
So
in
this
this
is an
case,
inbound action.
so this is a perfect case of an inbound integration,
Okay.
where your source of data is not Workday, it is outside, but then you are making it synchronized to Workday.
Okay.
So we understood the XSD structure, how it's get generated. Now we will discuss different types of different types of data outputs that Workday supports. So let me see if So to generate the XSD structure, you don't need to authenticate anything. But when you want to actually see the data, then Workday asks you for the authentication. It could be your own username and password which you are using. So whatever level of access your user has, depending on that, you will be able to see the data. So in our case, I don't have the username and password for my user which I am being logging in with. So I have to create an ISU for this, and then my ISU should has permissions. So I've just I have created this beforehand, but we'll be discussing this in the security session. But for now, let me just use this and see if this works for me. So when you click the URL, you will be prompted to enter. So whenever you are doing something in the browser and your browser does not have any cache of the username password stored, then you will be prompted for the username and password. So this browser hit URL always kind of behaves as if this URL is being hit from an outside system. Similarly, your the other systems which you will be sharing this data, they will be kind of using the similar tools like Postman or some other internal system, where they will be hitting this URL like this. So whenever this URL is hidden outside of Workday, browser is also an outside of Workday only from Workday side. So then it kinds of prompts you. You cannot enter it, see the data without the level of authentication. So you have to authenticate. And for that, you have to provide the username and password, which is one of the way of authenticating. So how this URL gets generated and how do you share this URL? So when I clicked on here, you will see that a URL was created automatically here, and this is what I see. So let's understand about this URL, how this URL gets generated, what it is composed of. So it will start from here as a REST HTTPS GET request, and then it will start from the Workday side. It will start from your data center. So this tenant is on WD5 data center. So starting with your data center, then starts with your tenant type. That is, it is an impel tenant, not a production tenant. So impel services 1.workday.com. Had it been a production tenant, so this URL, when you are going to generate, it will depend on tenant to tenant. So when you have developed something in the non-production tenant, you have tested it with this URL. When you will be moving to further tenants for testing, let's say you're moving to UAT for sandbox, and then finally you are moving to production. So every tenant you make your report migration, this URL is going to change in every tenant. So you have to share the URL from the new tenant to the downstream system, because this gets changed when your tenant gets changed. So you have to share it from that particular tenant for the further testing ahead. So that's why I'm saying, if this is your impel tenant, non-production, and the URL will be created like this. Had it been a production tenant, it would have been like WD5 myworkday.com, something like that, whatever is the tenant name. So until here, it will be like the tenant naming formation. Then these parameters which are coming now will be common across. CCX will be common, service will be common. So it will be common across the tenant, across the organizations itself, whatever the organization is in Workday, that will be using the same nomenclature. So these CCX, service, custom report 2, it will all be same. These three attributes will be same, whether you are changing the tenant or whether you are running it in some other organization or something. So these things will be constant. Then comes your actual tenant name. So this is the data center. Then this is the type of the tenant, which it is. And then here comes the actual tenant name. So this will be your tenant name. So this is going to change when you are moving from. So if you're just moving from Impel to Impel, let's say there is a dev1 tenant, dev2 tenant. So in that cases, this will remain same, and only the tenant name is going to change. So you have Impel 1, Impel 2, Impel 3 in this case. But if you're moving from an Impel to production, then this thing also change because it becomes myworkday.com. And then again, this will also change. So whatever the tenant name is. So this is your unique tenant name. Then here comes the owner of the report. So if you see, my owner of my report is the ISU which I had here, because I transferred the ownership from the individual user to the system user. Had it been the owner of my report as an individual user, then the same would be reflected in the URL also. So my owner is this ISU. So in the URL also it is reflected. So if there is a space in between your ISU, since the URL should be in continuous format and cannot accept spaces, by default Workday fills it with the percentile. So ISU percentile and this continuously. So until here is my ISU name. Then comes, once my ISU name is done, then comes my actual report name. So once this is done, then comes your report namespace that was there. So this is my report. So if you go here, the namespace of your report. So this is the namespace of the report coming here. So that's why if tomorrow you go and change the namespace here, and you have not generated the URL again, and your vendor was still using the same URL, then it will start failing the integration, because the link that they will be hitting will be having this namespace, and you have already changed this. Maybe you appended with 1, 2, 3 something here, and then you have not shared the updated URL. So they would be hitting this while it did never exist, because you appended 1, 2, 3 in there. That's why it is not ideal to change the namespace when you have go live. If you really need to, then let your vendor aware and share them the updated URL. So this is here your unique report name, and then comes in the question mark, and then format is equals to simple XML. So until here, for the same report, the entire URL will be same. The only thing going to change is the format part. So here you have a format applied is equal to simple XML. So this last 4 lines, 4 words or 3 words will decide that what will be the format they are going to request. So if they are requesting a simple XML, then it will be like a simple XML. If they are requesting a JSON, then it will be like this. So when you're going to generate JSON, Workday will append a format like JSON. So this is how your URL is formed. And if they are requesting a simple XML, then you are going to give them the simple XML. If they are requesting a JSON, then you will just right click, copy URL, then just paste it in your browser. So everything will be same, only the last part is going to change. Format is equals to JSON. And if it is a CSV, then format is equals to CSV. Now, when you generate the Workday XML format, so since Workday's default method is Workday XML, you will see nothing is appended here. Only after the report name is done, the URL is finished. So when nothing is appended as a format, then if you send a request by this URL, Workday will understand that they are requesting a Workday XML format. So if there is no format attached after this, then that means it is the Workday XML that they are requesting. Had it been any other format other than the Workday XML, then it will be appended like this and format is equals to. Otherwise, in the case of Workday XML, the URL will end here. This is how my simple XML is generated here. I have generated the simple XML format, and my credentials might be now remembered by my browser. So if I generate another format or another XML using the same, I'll not be prompted to enter the password now. So this is how your XML gets generated in the simple XML format. So how your data is encapsulated here. So as I told you that the namespace of your report plays a vital role here, and the namespace NSWD. So the namespace of your custom report here. So now every element coming from this data source, this custom report source, will be prefixed with WD. So my attribute name was only hire date in the report, department, primary work email, but now they are prefixed with WD, so that they can be uniquely identified that the hire date field is coming from WD, which is my, so in this single input and single output, it will not matter. But let's say when you are using in the same integration two different outputs, and let's say there are two custom reports, and two custom reports are generated, and let's say in both the custom reports, let's say you have an employee ID field. So, and you are consuming it in a single integration. Let's say you are creating a studio and you have two custom reports and you are somehow merging them and using the grouping and all those things. So if those are two employee IDs and you are consuming them in a single transformation, how will Workday understand that which employee ID is which? So that is why the namespace plays a vital role in here. And whenever you are consuming two different XMLs at the same time, then you may need to make the name differently. So you may call it something else, WD, WE, or whatever you want to call, just so that the tags which are generated for that particular XML source, they are coming from a different namespace. So WD hire date, that means the namespace of my custom report is WD, and my WD hire date, that means this is the source field coming from this XML. So WD hire date, WD department. So these are the elements which are generated, and this is the data which is encapsulated here. So everything will be encapsulated inside the report data report when the data is coming from a custom report. So custom reports data is encapsulated like this only. Everything will be inside WD report data started, WD report data ended, and then your XML.
Vijay, quick question. So for any studio integration, we definitely need to have a custom report, right?
It's not like that. No.
It's not like that? Okay.
No.
Okay.
If
Then how are we, I don't know, it might be silly question, or I'm just thinking.
Not.
How are we even sending the data? Just through Studio itself by writing the code?
No. See, when you're using Studio, there could be a lot of reasons. Let's say there is an inbound integration. So
yeah, if it is
an inbound, if it is an outbound, that means you are sharing some data to outside, and there should be some source of data. Now for the source of data, it could be your another integration. Let's say there is a core connector you have built and you are consuming the core connector workers output that we are going to learn the core connector next classes. So your source of data could be a core connector's XML. Your source of data could be a report. Your source of data could be more than one. You are also using the core connector and you are also using the custom report. So you are enriching the output. Let's say your core connector is not giving you everything. So you enriching the output by creating a custom report, and now you are appending the data along with the, so in that case, your data.
So Studio and core connector combined can be one integration.
No, integration core connector would be separate. Your custom report will be separate, and then your studio will be separate. But then your studio will be calling inside your custom report and your core connector's data, so that it will be consuming both the data and maybe creating a single file.
Yeah, I know about the reporting stuff, but I was a little confused on the core connector. So when we create core connectors and create an integration, so Studio is something that is, that calls the data from core connector, right? It can be. One of the option is
correct.
Okay.
It can.
Okay, got it.
So this is how your data is there in the custom reports representation. Everything is inside this report data. So this is report data is only one for one custom report. And then the number of employees that you have, or the number of records which are generated in case of worker, let's say we are assuming worker, but if a report is created, let's say cost center or something, or maybe a metadata position or anything, then whatever the number of iterations happening, those iterations will be represented by those many report entries. So you'll see that many workers in your custom report output, that many report entry tags will be generated, and actual data per report entry will be inside in this report entry tag. So 1 report entry, 1 worker, 1000 report entries, 1000 worker. So your repetition is going to happen on the report entries, and Workday will keep on writing the report entry unless every worker is finished. And now the data will be residing in the WD report entry, hire date for first employee, department for first employee. So all the data will be encapsulated here, and they will be on the same level. If they are using the primary business object as worker, they will be on the same level.